Welcome to the Trial Lawyer Section 6th Annual Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg Vanguard Award and CLE Program. This program is sponsored by the Trial Lawyer Section and the Committee on Continuing Legal Education of the New York State Bar Association. Today's program will run for 2 hours. If you are attending for CLE credit, please make sure you're logged on under your full name so that we can accurately record your attendance. At the conclusion of the program, please return to your learning dashboard to enter any verification codes that have been displayed or announced. Please do not ask for or share the code, as doing so could result in the program losing its accreditation. Please note that due to time constraints, both the chat and Q&A function have been disabled for this program. And now I am pleased to pass the program on to Angelique Moreno, the co-chair of today's program, the co-chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the Trial Lawyers Section, as well as the immediate past chair of the Trial Lawyers Section. Angelique, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gina. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Trial Lawyers Section 6th Annual RBG Vanguard Award and CLE Program. Thank you so much for joining us from near and far, friends, colleagues, and members of the legal community, as we come together to celebrate what truly matters, our shared commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the practice of law. This event has become one of the most meaningful traditions of our section. Each year, we take a moment to honor those who carry forward the spirit of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, advancing fairness, opening doors, and ensuring that our justice system reflects the communities it serves. Tonight's program is packed with inspiration from our outstanding keynote speakers and panelists to our incredible honoree, who embodies the courage and conviction that Justice Ginsburg modeled every day of her life. Even though we're gathering virtually, the energy and sense of purpose are still very real. So thank you all for being here, for engaging in this conversation, and for helping us continue this important work together. And now, to officially kick off the evening, it is my pleasure to introduce someone who leads by example, Brett French, Chair of the Trial Lawyers Section of the New York State Bar Association. Brett has been a tireless advocate for our section and for promoting professionalism, mentorship, and inclusion within the trial bar. His steady leadership and commitment to elevating our work and is a big part of why we're here tonight. Brett, thank you for your leadership, and the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Angelique. Thank you as well to Katie Buckley, our co-chair. Welcome to everyone here this afternoon, heading into this evening for the 6th Annual RBG Vanguard Awards. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this. This is my 4th year being involved, and it's been really an amazing experience to see the program evolve from where it first came from. Angelique and Katie, you should be so proud of yourselves as our program chairs. You really lead with example. And I can't say enough about the nominees we've received for the award we'll be giving out tonight. Congratulations to, I want to mention my own congratulations to Marea Wachsman on her selection to receive the RBG Vanguard Award. I want everyone to know we received a number of truly amazing nominations, and it was a very difficult decision. I hope we all take pride in the fact that we have so many tremendous nominees to select from and members of the bar, and I'm so proud to be all of your colleagues. I think with that, I will introduce our first keynote speaker, Honorable Carmen Beauchamp Saparic, excuse me. Judge Saparic is the daughter of Puerto Rican parents and grew up in Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan. She received her undergraduate degree from Hunter College and went on to attend St. John's Law School thereafter. After serving in the Legal Aid Society and the New York court system, the judge was appointed to the Criminal Court of the City of New York in 1978. She was first elected to the New York State Supreme Court in 1982. In 1994, Governor Cuomo appointed her to the Court of Appeals, where she served until 2012. Judge Serperic currently chairs the New York State Board of Law Examiners, and is a member of the New York State Indigent Legal Services Board. She's a founding member of the Latino Judges Association and now co-chairs its foundation. Judge Serperic has been active in many bar association activities, including the Puerto Rican Bar Association, and she serves on various boards of not-for-profit organizations, including the Fund for Modem Courts, and serves as Chair Emeritus of the Historical Society of the New York State Courts. Thank you so much for being here, Judge.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. French, and for that most generous introduction. And thank you for all the good work that you do as chair of the trial lawyer section. And thank you also to Angelique Moreno and her co-chair, Katie Buckley, co-chairs of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee of this section, for inviting me to speak today at the 6th annual Ruth Bader Ginsburg Vanguard Award and CLE program. To be part of a program that honors the late Justice Ginsburg is indeed a great honor, as is the celebration of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our profession. I also feel extremely honored to be participating in a program with Justice Lillian Wan, currently gracing the Appellate Division Second Department bench, and Court of Claims judges Javier Vargas and Zainab Chaudhry, both whom I first met while serving at the Court of Appeals. They were then young court attorneys with great talent, whose paths to the bench in many ways mirrors my own, and of whom I am very proud. But I was given a very specific assignment today, and that is to share my story and trajectory from my earliest days as a student to my current days as an appellate lawyer at a major law firm. So let me begin by saying that standing before you today, or I'm sitting in my office, sitting before you today is one very grateful and proud Latina, reaffirming her strong belief in our freedom and our system of justice, and proud of her heritage as a Hispanic woman, firmly devoted to our Anglo common law legal system, a legal system that I am so blessed to have been part of for over a half century. I feel so fortunate to be here with you this afternoon and welcome the opportunity to share with you a little bit about my life and career. My story is not unlike many of yours. I guess I'm part of that great mosaic that is New York. My parents came to New York from Puerto Rico in 1929, not a great year anywhere. I came along after the Great Depression and grew up in Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan, attending both parochial and public schools. I attended Hunter College and trained to be a teacher, but I had also been inspired by the law, so I did both. I taught in a junior high school during the day and went to St. John's Law School at night. The days were long, but very fulfilling. Upon graduation, I began working for the Legal Aid Society in a neighborhood law office in the South Bronx, and was able to apply my newly acquired lawyering skills to the problems that beset my clients, my most disadvantaged clients. At first, they were suspicious. They were not accustomed to women lawyers, especially women lawyers who spoke Spanish, and I was often mistaken for a secretary or an interpreter. But the trust grew, and soon more women attorneys and more Spanish-speaking attorneys joined our small staff. I recall my clients primed by notices of eviction and family court warrants and other desperate economic and familial situations. And I recall the poverty of Hunts Point and the frustration that my clients encountered. I only hope that the years that I spent at that office in some small way helped to alleviate the anguish of some of those poor families. So several years passed, and I had the unique opportunity of coming to work for the state court system at what was then known the Judicial Conference of the State of New York. And I don't know if many of you remember what that is, but our offices were located in Lower Manhattan. I worked in counsel's office. I was the only woman in counsel's office and certainly the only Hispanic. We worked hard, laying the foundation for what is now a most professional and efficient office of court administration. So I left the Judicial Conference in 1972 to become chief law assistant in the criminal court, working for Judge David Ross. When he became citywide administrative judge, he took me with him, where I assumed the duties of counsel to the New York City administrative judge while maintaining my chief law assistant functions in criminal court and Supreme Court criminal division. I worked in the courts for close to 10 years and often wondered, while rendering bench assistance to the judges, could I ever become a judge? Was a career in the judiciary within my realm of expectation? Why not? So I pursued the process, and 47 years ago, in 1978, I was appointed by Mayor Ed Koch to the criminal court of the city of New York, the first Hispanic woman on a court of record in our state. I was making history, paving the road for others to come behind me. And in 1982, another historic event occurred. I was elected to our state Supreme Court in Manhattan against the first Hispanic woman elected to that court. In fact, our county leader called me a twofer because I was a woman and Hispanic. And then the ultimate dream came true. On December 1st, 1993, then Governor Marea L announced his selection for the Court of Appeals, its first Hispanic and only second woman in its 150-year history. So I enjoyed this crowning prize of the legal profession for 19 years. Unfortunately, it came to an end 13 years ago, when upon reaching age 70, I became constitutionally required to step down. I suppose some would say that I had broken the proverbial glass ceiling, but little did I know when I was a student at Hunter College, a Puerto Rican kid from Washington Heights, that I would become a lawyer, much less a judge. And then to find myself as a judge of the Court of Appeals, our state's highest court, that would have been unimaginable. I was fortunate. I met some wonderful people along the way, starting, of course, with my friends and mentors in the court system. Also, early on, I joined the Puerto Rican Bar Association, which was committed to working for the equality of opportunity and the advancement of Puerto Ricans and other Latinos in the legal profession and in the judiciary. I also joined the Women's Bar Association, which was committed to promoting women in the profession. By banding, networking, and working together, women lawyers and minority lawyers generally have become a powerful force capable of affecting social and political change. We now cover the spectrum of our profession, and our numbers are ever growing. Also, I joined and continue to be a proud member of this great bar association, as well as the New York City and New York County Bar Associations. I also became somewhat involved in Manhattan politics. Joining a political club certainly can provide lawyers with a forum, a starting place, an opportunity to serve one's community, and the opportunity of meeting people who, upon recognizing talent, can be very helpful in the process, and oftentimes very difficult process filled with uncertainty, complexity, screening panels, and unwanted criticism and scrutiny. But I made it through the process successfully. And I feel encouraged and emboldened just knowing that there are many who have followed after me and that our numbers are ever growing. We continue making history. We come from a diverse and multicultural cohort whose parents and grandparents, similar to all immigrant groups, had to learn a new language and generally acclimate themselves to their new surroundings. For the first time, they were confronted with racial and ethnic prejudice and had to learn to live and work among many different people. They had come to New York, to an urban center, and life was tough, but they persevered for us, and here we are, making them proud. We have committed ourselves to making our lives and the lives of those we love better, to serving our communities, our city, and our country. The legal profession has provided us with unlimited opportunities for improving the lives of others. It has been said by others, and I'm quoting from a friend, that that we lawyers belong to one of the most impactful, influential, and consequential professions in American life. Lawyers right wrongs, improve lives, and make society better. We're society's problem solvers. No other profession affords so many opportunities to help people. So even now, as a lawyer working in big law, I have the opportunity of continuing to serve others. We serve our clients, both those who pay us hefty legal fees and those pro bono clients for whom we strive to deliver quality legal services, helping to meet the unfulfilled legal needs of our communities. Also, my law firm, Greenberg Traurig, has allowed me to continue my work in public service. In fact, they have encouraged it. I currently chair the New York State Board of Law Examiners that administers a bar exam. And for anyone who's interested, the bar results are coming out tomorrow. I co-chair the Chief Judge's Justice Task Force that examines the causes of wrongful convictions and acts as a think tank for criminal justice reforms. And I have served on boards of several nonprofits, as you heard, dedicated to improving the quality of justice delivered to our larger community. As lawyers, we could do that. I wake up every morning and reflect upon how lucky I am. I have been the recipient of great gifts of opportunity, as we all have. It is so vitally important that we pass these gifts along and give of ourselves to those who pass through our courthouse doors. This is what I have strived to do for close to 60 years in the profession. I suppose years from now, we will look back and reflect on the passage of time, the historical significance of living in the post-9/11, post-COVID era, and contemplate on this wave of change that is sweeping our land and the globe as we grope to find definition and resolution to issues that just a few short years ago seemed resolved. We're no longer living in times where the so-called enemy was safely behind an iron curtain. Political boundaries as well as political philosophies are shifting daily. We no longer have a distant, remote enemy to fear. Our enemies seem closer at hand, cloaked in righteousness, fostering a culture of grievance and invoking terror in the minds and hearts of innocent people, as we are witnessing today. We are living through a period where, although on the one hand, we seek integration into a global community, on the other hand, there are forces that work in our own country which are attempting to deny some of us and our families basic rights and opportunities that we had expected to enjoy. But Americans are strong, and although currently facing many difficult challenges, we will persevere. And as lawyers, preserve and protect our democratic ideals. We will restore public trust and confidence in our courts and our judiciary, and we will preserve the rule of law, protect our most vulnerable among us, and despite the dismantling of DEI programs, we will continue our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in building a pipeline that reflects our society as a whole. I congratulate the State Bar and the Trial Lawyers section for advancing the work of this DEI committee, so ably co-chaired by Angelique Marino and Katie Buckley. I look forward to future programs such as these and the continued celebration of our diversity. So thank you so much for the opportunity to address you this afternoon, and congratulations to our honoree, Marea Wachsman, on receiving the Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg Vanguard Award. Thank you for your attention. I'll be back later to join the panel discussion. Enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Suparik. It is always an honor to be with you as being a Latina, being Puerto Rican, coming from New York City. You have always been an idol to me.
Thank you.
Now it is my great honor to introduce our co-keynote speaker, the Honorable Lillian Wan, Associate Justice of the Appellate Division, Second Department. Justice Wan is not only an extraordinary jurist, but also a deeply respected leader who embodies the very values we celebrate tonight: integrity, inclusion, and a steadfast commitment to justice. Her career has been defined not just by her impressive achievements on the bench, but by her unwavering dedication to mentoring and lifting others along the way. Justice Wan's journey is one that inspires. She has served our courts and our communities with distinction as a family court judge, a Supreme Court justice, and now as a member of one of the most respected appellate benches in our state. Her reputation for fairness, thoughtfulness, and compassion precedes her. She has an exceptional ability to bring both humanity and intellect to the law, a combination that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself often described as essential to good judging. But what stands out most about Justice Wan is not just her legal brilliance, it's her heart. She has been a mentor and a role model to so many, particularly to women, to young lawyers, and to those who might not have always seen themselves represented in our profession. She makes time for others. She listens. She encourages. She leads by example. Justice Wan reminds us that true leadership is not about titles or recognition. It's about impact. It's about using your position to open doors for others and to ensure that justice is not only done, but seen and felt by everyone who enters our courts. We are truly grateful to have her with us to share her insights and inspiration. Justice Wan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Angelique, my friend, for that kind and overly generous introduction. Angelique and I were both honored together at the Brooklyn Women's Bar Gala in 2024, and it is always a privilege to be in the same space as this incredible woman. So thank you. Thank you to the co-chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Catherine Buckley, and the chair of the Trial Lawyers section, Brett French, and Vice Chair Seth Rosner for your leadership and for sponsoring this amazing program to celebrate the legacy of the incomparable Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her tireless commitment to gender equality and civil rights. To my co-keynote presenter, the Honorable Carmen Beauchamp-Siparek, you are a true trailblazer and you serve as an inspiration to so many, including myself. We had the privilege of being on a Queens Family Court program a little while ago for Women's History Month, and I'm again humbled to share this space with you today. And to my fellow panelists, my good friend, Judge Javier Vargas, I feel lucky that our career paths crossed for a few years as family court judges in Brooklyn Family Court. And my dear friend, Judge Zainab Chaudhry, I cherish your friendship and the moments that we try to steal for each other in our crazy lives. And a warm congratulations to my friend, Marea Wachsman, the winner of the 6th annual Ruth Bader Ginsburg Vanguard Award. It's been a privilege serving on the board of the Brooklyn Women's Bar Association for all of these years with you. So it's really great to be amongst like-minded friends this evening. When I became a judge over 13 years ago, I never imagined that I would be giving a keynote address for the New York State Bar Association Trial Lawyers section. I'm the proud daughter of Chinese immigrants. My father and mother came to this country in 1969 and 1970, and they settled in Queens. My mom was a neonatal intensive care unit nurse for 40 years. She worked the graveyard shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. so that she could shuttle my little brother and me back and forth to various after-school activities and still have dinner on the table. My dad worked at Con Edison as an industrial engineer for nearly 30 years and then as an adjunct math professor at Stony Brook for 10 years. But when they first came to this country, my mother had $100 in her pocket and she worked as a nurse's aide until she got her license. And my dad worked at Pacific Grocery Store in Astoria, Queens, getting paid $18 a day for a year and a half while he was looking for a job. My parents worked tirelessly so that my brother and I could succeed in this country. I was born in Flushing, Queens. My parents then moved out to East Islip in Suffolk County for some more space. And when I was about 6, my parents moved to Malvern, Nassau County, where they still live today, so that my dad could be closer to Penn Station for work. We were pretty much the only Chinese family around then, and I grew up around kids who thought I was related to Bruce Lee, and they thought I knew Kung Fu because that's the only thing they knew about being Chinese, and Kung Fu was the only thing they could think of associated with someone that was Asian. People were always surprised that I spoke English so well, and they did feel the need to tell me that all the time. I was a typical American teenager, but I didn't look like everyone else around me, so I was always treated like this perpetual foreigner, even though I was born and raised in New York. When I was a kid, I did not want to be Asian. I just wanted to look like everyone else. I wanted to have blonde hair, spiral curls, not this black straight hair. I got perms all throughout middle school. I wanted to conform to the role models that I saw. And at the time, there were not too many Asian American role models. My mom's a great cook, and she made both Chinese food and all types of American foods. She made lasagna, corned beef and cabbage, cheesecake from those, silver bars of Philadelphia cream cheese. And for school lunch, I would often have cold cut sandwiches like every other kid. But sometimes I would have a Chinese shredded pork floss sandwich, which is actually pretty delicious, but kids would make fun of it because it looks like you're eating fluffy clumps of hair or dryer lint, right? That's what people used to call it. So I used to be embarrassed to eat my lunch. But then, of course, later I would come to miss those lunches. My parents forced me to go to Chinese school for 3 hours every Sunday for 10 years. Once I got to middle school, I fought them every step of the way. I resented having to go to Chinese school on the weekend when I could have been hanging out with my friends, listening to the Smiths, watching the boys skateboard on the street, or doing practically anything else instead. In Chinese class, instead of paying attention to the lesson, I wrote letters to friends, doodled, secretly read 17 or teeny bopper magazines, and did everything but learn how to read and write in Chinese. And I really was truly a brat in every American teenage girl sense. And I went to Chinese school kicking and screaming every weekend. As I grew older and more independent, I missed my connection with my family and to Chinese culture. There were no pork floss sandwiches at SUNY Binghamton. When I got to college, I immediately regretted not knowing Chinese better. And I took Chinese class for my freshman and sophomore years. Interestingly, fast forward to 2010, when I had a 5-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, I was regretting the fact that I didn't really speak Chinese to the kids at all, and I was worried that they were going to lose their Chinese culture and heritage. So what did I do? I enrolled my 5-year-old daughter in Chinese school on Sunday for 3 hours every weekend. So sometimes we really cannot help but become our mothers. My daughter Sophia was a good sport and went to Chinese school at this elementary school on Division Street in Manhattan, Chinatown. But after about a year, we stopped that experiment, and there was soccer, there was ballet. It was impossible to keep up. So now that 5-year-old daughter is 20 years old and in college. And guess what she enrolled in her freshman year without a single word from me, I promise. Chinese 101. Not a single word from me. And then for her sophomore year, she took intermediate Chinese for the whole year and then spent 10 weeks over the summer, just this past summer, in Beijing, China, where she immersed herself in Mandarin Chinese. And now my daughter's Chinese is embarrassingly much better than mine. So we really can't escape who we are. So I have friends and colleagues who always knew that they wanted to be a lawyer when they grew up. That wasn't me. I went to college at Binghamton and became an English major, still not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. I did this internship at the Broome County Department of Social Services, where I shadowed social workers and sat in on some supervised visits between children in foster care and their parents. And I think that probably planted a seed for what I would do later as a lawyer. I went to law school still not knowing what I wanted to do with a law degree, but I had this vague notion that I wanted to be in public service. And then out of law school, I took a job at the New York City Administration for Children's Services and worked as an ACS lawyer for 9 years. And when I started at ACS, I started with 2 other Asian American women, and we were all confused for each other all the time. In the office, on the record in court, walking around the halls of Manhattan Family Court, and even, believe it or not, by my payroll, who sent my Asian American colleagues' pay stub to my home address. And even as a judge, I am still being confused with other Asian American judges that are on the bench. So back then, as a lawyer, I appeared in front of judges all day, every day, and I never once looked up and considered a career on the bench. I certainly never appeared before anybody who looked like me. So it was not really even something that I could fathom for myself. I didn't know how those judges got there, and I didn't know who put them there, and they really could have descended from the sky or been conjured with a magic wand for all I knew about any of the processes. So I left ACS for an opportunity to work as a court attorney referee with a trailblazing judge in Brooklyn, the Honorable Margarita Lopez Torres, the first Latina elected to the surrogates court in the state of New York. And she was the one who said to me, "You should apply to be a judge." She encouraged me every step of the way. She told me to get out and network with other lawyers and judges, to go to bar association events, and she believed that I could be a great judge. And I had never thought about it for one moment until she said it to me. So I think that's a lesson that mentors really are critically important for all of us. So you can't apply for mayoral appointment in New York City until you've been a lawyer for at least 10 years. So what did I do? I put my papers in to become a New York City family court judge after being admitted to practice law in New York for 10 years and 1 day in January of 2011. And I was not successful the first time I put in. I had a subcommittee interview and then a full committee interview. And the full mayor's committee interview was probably the worst interview I ever had in my entire life. I was in front of 19 people I had never met before, and I really did a terrible job of convincing them that I should be a judge. And I didn't advance to the next stage, and I was totally crushed, but an interesting thing happened. Couple weeks after that interview, I went out to a Judicial Friends Association event, and I saw the chair of the Mayor's Advisory Committee on the Judiciary, Zachary Carter. He was at the cheese and crackers table, and I went up to him, I stuck my hand out, reintroduced myself, and thanked him for the opportunity to interview before his committee. And he said to me by surprise, "I remember who you are. Why don't you give me a call tomorrow?" And I didn't even know he was allowed to speak to me. So this should be a lesson to everyone to stick out your hand and introduce or reintroduce yourself to people. And when someone offers to help you, to talk to you, to give you guidance, take them up on their offer. So the next morning, I did what Zachary Carter told me to do. I called him. And he essentially told me that I had a strong application and that many people that I worked with over the years were passionate about my candidacy. But I indeed had a terrible interview, which I knew already, and that the person that everyone described in the application was not the person who showed up at the interview. Mr. Carter asked me if I was familiar with Star Trek. And he said that a good judge is a good mix of both Spock and Kirk. And you showed us all Spock at that interview. He encouraged me to reapply, which I did a few months later. And then a few months after that, and after a much better set of interviews, Mayor Michael Bloomberg appointed me to the bench. And I was the first Asian American woman appointed to the New York City Family Court bench. So failure is not necessarily permanent. It's often just part of the journey. And if you don't succeed the first time, you really do need to keep coming back. So I would not be here today if it were not for another mentor, the Honorable Randall T. Eng, the former presiding justice of the Appellate Division, Second Department. Judge Eng was the very first Asian American jurist in the state of New York in the year 1983, when he was appointed by Mayor Edward Koch. 1983 is really not that long ago. Judge Eng taught me from the beginning the value of being visible and embracing leadership positions. And he also taught me that politics is not a dirty word. Judge Eng opened the door and left it open behind him so that others like me could walk through it too. And I do my best to do that for others now. I stand on the shoulders of many who came before me, and now I hope to lend my shoulders to the next generation of judges. So this is the reason why I believe fiercely in mentorship. I view it as an obligation to lift as we climb, with the hope that others will do the same. I sometimes say that I am not a monogamous mentor. I will mentor anyone who seeks mentorship. It's important to me to demystify the process of becoming a judge, whether it's the appointment process or the election process. It doesn't happen by magic. And I am willing to share whatever insight I have so that the path will be a little bit easier for the next person. And I rejoice when there are multiple Asian American candidates for a particular position, because we used to not apply at all. When I became a judge 13 years ago, there were only about 20 Asian American judges in the New York State court system, only about 1.8% of our judiciary. Now there's about 70 Asian American jurists out of approximately 1,300 or so judges. So now we're 5% of the New York State judiciary. It's not easy to be the first. For one thing, when you are the first, you never want to be the last. It should never just be one and done. I have the privilege of being the first Asian American woman on the Appellate Division in New York State. It is notable that we didn't even have our first Asian American judges elected in upstate New York until November of 2020. We only have elected Asian American Supreme Court justices in Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. That's only 3 out of 62 total counties in all of New York State. And there are currently only 9 elected Asian American Supreme Court justices in the state. And that's out of a total of about 386 elected Supreme Court justices in New York. And that is significant because only elected Supreme Court justices are eligible for appointment to the Appellate Division. There has never been an Asian American appellate judge in the 3rd or 4th departments. There has still never been an Asian American judge elected out of the Bronx or Staten Island. And there has never been an Asian American on New York State's highest court, the Court of Appeals. Last year, I was joined on the Appellate Division Second Department by my colleague, Justice Phil Hom, the first time in history that 2 Asian Americans have served at the same time on my court. As a judge of the Second Department, I now have the privilege of being a part of new attorney admission ceremonies. It's the very place where I was admitted to the practice of law almost 25 years ago. And the increasing diversity of the class that is being admitted is a thrilling thing for me. We might have about 40 new attorneys standing before us, and there are times when I have noted a handful of Asian Pacific American candidates standing before me, and I always think to myself, this is why I'm here. So people that are seeing me sitting here will say, I can do that too. Why not me? I'm often asked what advice I have to impart to lawyers and judges, and I often have to tell people to get out of their own way. You have to put yourself out there, get active in a bar association committee, resist the urge to go home after work and put your pajamas on to watch Netflix. Fill out the judicial application, apply for the leadership position, and stop giving me reasons for why it shouldn't be you and start thinking, why not you? And apply for a position that you don't think you are qualified for. Because I guarantee that there is a person more unqualified than you are who doesn't have that concern and will probably get the job that you don't apply for. What's the worst thing that can happen? You don't get the position? But even if you don't get the position, maybe you will be thought of for the next position that comes along. And of course, if you don't succeed the first time, keep coming back and do it again, because no does not mean never. Right? I wasn't successful the first time with the mayor's committee, but I resubmitted. Same thing with Supreme Court nomination process. That was a 6-year process for me that I started in 2016. I didn't get the nomination in 2016 or 2017 or 2018 or 19 or 2020. But in 2021, there were 7 open seats, and I was privileged enough to get one of those seats. And at the time that I was elected, there were 4 vacancies in the appellate division's 2nd department. And I knew that there had never been an Asian American woman on the appellate division. And since the Honorable Randall Eng retired from the bench in 2017, there had not been an Asian American judge on the appellate division's 2nd department bench in 5 years. And remember, my court is a court that covers 10 counties, including Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, Rockland, Dutchess, Putnam, and Orange. So I thought maybe now is a good time. So I started preparing my judicial screening application for the 2nd department. I submitted it by mid-January 2022. I interviewed with the screening committee in April, and then had the privilege of being appointed to the appellate division by Governor Hochul in May of 2022. All this to say that timing is really important, but as I recently heard Stephen Breyer, former Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, say, you have to be on the corner when the bus comes by. I'm proud to be the first Asian American female judge of the 2nd department, and I am a firm believer that our court system, our judiciary, needs to reflect the communities and the people that we serve. Diversity on the bench increases public trust, confidence, and the appearance of fairness in our courts. And I also know that if I just do my job to the best of my ability, that I open up new paths and possibilities for those coming after me. I also think it's critically important that our children and all those who come after us see the many possibilities for themselves, including becoming a jurist, and ask the question, why not me? So I look forward to the day where we do not have to use the words first and only to describe Asian Americans in the judiciary. And while I know that we have made progress, there is still much work to be done. So thank you all for listening and for your time today and having this wonderful program.
Thank you so much, Judge Juan. Good afternoon, everyone. As you've heard, I'm Katie Buckley, along with Angelique. I have the privilege to co-chair the Trial Lawyer Section Diversity Committee. Thank you all for attending this wonderful event. And please allow me to introduce the rest of our panelists. You've already met Judge Juan and Judge Saparik. In addition, it is my pleasure to welcome Judges Zainab Chaudhry and Javier Vargas, both of the New York State Court of Claims. Judge Chaudhry was the first Muslim appointed in 2022 to the New York State Court of Claims and among the first 3 judges of South Asian descent to serve on that court. Prior to her appointment to the bench, she served as the principal court attorney for the New York State Court of Appeals, as well as working for the Appeals Bureau of the Attorney General's Office. Judge Chaudhry is known for her mentoring of law students and young attorneys, particularly those from underrepresented communities. In 2023, she was awarded the Trailblazer Award from the Muslim Bar Association of New York. Welcome, Judge Chaudhry. We're excited to hear from you. Also appointed in 2022, Judge Vargas was the first Latino LGBTQ+ judge to join the Court of Claims. He previously served as a civil court judge in the housing part in Bronx County, as well as a family court judge. He has held various roles in the New York State court system since 1993. Judge Vargas is also known for his mentoring and encouraging judicial service through the Pathways to the Judiciary programs. He holds positions in the Hispanic National Bar Association, Latino Judges Association, and International Association of LGBTQ Judges. He has received various accolades for his service and dedication to the community through charitable and cultural organizations. Thank you for agreeing to join us, Judge Vargas. So I will start with Judge Chaudhry. Judge Chaudhry, your presence on the bench represents a powerful story of perseverance and representation. Could you tell us a little about your journey, what inspired you to become a judge, and what that path looked like for you?
Thank you, Katie and Angelique and the New York State Bar Association, first of all, for having me here. It's such an honor to be invited to be part of this distinguished panel and this very special program. And just to be with judges who have been mentors, Judge Saparik, and Judge Juan, of course, also a friend and mentor, and Judge Vargas and I were appointed the same year. So it's just so special to have a connection with all of the panelists, and thank you, it's an honor. So Katie, to your question, I think just by way of background, many people may know other South Asian families, but I was expected to be a physician, as is the case in many families from the South Asian subcontinent. And while that did not happen, I did pursue that for a while. I was a biology major, and then I was trying to be cool in college and also was an art, had a second major as an art student, and I thought I would go into scientific illustration. I really just never had a thought about the law. And then my father died, unfortunately, suddenly, shortly after I graduated from college. And while helping my family cope with that very big loss, I had met my parents' estate attorney, and that was the first time I had ever met a lawyer at all. And I started to think about how my community was really unrepresented in the profession at that time. I can't even say underrepresented. That was the mid-1990s. I don't think there were more than a handful or two of Muslim lawyers in the entire country at that time, which really led me to think, well, maybe I can do that, and maybe I should do that. And so I was the first in my family and the first in my local Muslim and South Asian community to go to law school. I never imagined what my career would turn out to be. I think in the beginning I would hang out a shingle and, maybe be available for Muslim clients who might feel more comfortable with a Muslim attorney. But I never thought I would have this amazing career in public service that I've had, both starting out at the New York State Court of Appeals as a law clerk. That's where I worked with Judge Saparik. I worked for another judge, Judge Richard Wesley, and I'm going to give him a shout out shortly. But it just, and then the Attorney General's office after that in the Appeals Bureau. And just, I never imagined the possibility of becoming a judge like Judge Juan. It just never occurred to me, not while I was in law school, not in the entire following time as a practicing attorney. I just had never seen a judge that looked like me on the bench, although I had appeared in all state and federal appellate courts in this state. As for what inspired me to seek judicial office specifically, I had a few important mentors, Judge Wesley being one of them, who kept bringing it up, but honestly, I ignored them for over 10 years. I really ran away from that thought. I'm not sure really why. I was happy in my career, but I think now looking back, if I'm honest with myself, I think a large part of the hesitation was some version of an imposter syndrome, not believing I could do it. I've never seen anybody like me do it. And honestly, what business did I have being a trial judge after a 20+ year career as an appellate attorney? So to be honest with you, what really changed my mind and really inspired me was thinking about my young nieces and nephew growing up in this country in the difficult times in which we live. And after experiencing the social and political upheaval of the past several years, it really hit home. I really realized in a way that I hadn't before why representation on the bench, as in all other spheres of government, was so important. I think I knew that theoretically, but it just really didn't sink in. And I wanted them to know, these young kids, that they belonged here, that they were a vital part of the fabric of this country and this state, and that anything could be possible if they worked hard, believed in themselves, and dream big dreams, that they could be judges or have another role in government or be anything else. And so, as we all know, and as Judge Juan alluded to, you have to see it to believe it. So I really felt that if I believed I was qualified, then I really felt this responsibility to them and other young people in my community and outside the community to seriously pursue it. So that's when I started the arduous process for seeking an appointment to the Court of Claims. And I really sort of had a non-traditional path to the bench, but that's really the reason, Katie, that I felt compelled to go for it.
And you really answered kind of my next question, which was going to be about when you realized how important visibility and representation are. And I think you really discussed that already. So other than,
Well, I do really have something that I want to say to that, if you don't mind.
Yes, go right ahead.
Because I think that's an important question, because, even though that was the inspiration and I realized, that is important, that visibility and representation, not, really for the next generation. And I know what that means. I know what my being on the bench means as I travel around the state and I speak to communities and young attorneys and law students. I know that viscerally and personally is so important to them. So that is so important, but I really wanted to highlight another part of the importance of visibility and representation, because I really see that as twofold. One, as we spoke about, but also to those, my visibility and that representation to those who were or are unaware of my culture or community or experience as a person, as a woman of color, which, really at the time I went to law school and started out my career, that was almost everybody. And so I felt like that I represented not just myself, but all South Asian or Muslim women. And I felt that I had to be the best and I could not fail, because I knew I had to help pave the way, as other women of color of different communities had done for me, like the trailblazers, that we just heard from, Judge Saparic and Judge Juan. I owe, judges like them so much. And so I know that in being in the spaces that I have been in and excelling in my career have changed the minds and hearts of many people who may not have thought that I was capable or deserving of certain successes, or more commonly, really, were great, wonderful people who wanted to support me, but just had never met anyone from my community before and didn't really know how to perceive me or what to make of me. And so to me, that's this really important other piece of visibility and representation. And if I could here, just shout out to my judge, I'll still call him my judge. It's been like 30 years, but Judge Richard Wesley, who was just my greatest mentor and supported me and had been talking to me about the Court of Claims for so long. And, it's funny, and Judge Juan spoke a lot about mentorship, and you tend to think, oh, I should look for people like me or have had experiences like me, but mentors can really surprise you. And, you know, Judge Wesley and I came from such different walks of life, but he's been my biggest champion, even during some really challenging times in my career. So he just encouraged me to try for opportunities that I could never have imagined I could attain, including my judgeship. But the beautiful thing about our relationship is that he wanted to learn about my culture and became my biggest champion when he heard of any bias or prejudice being directed towards me or any member of my community, you know, after I'd gotten to know him and work for him. And he'll tell you, I was the first Muslim person he ever met. And I was with him when 9/11 happened. I was a law clerk to him, and we were in chambers, and Judge Separak will remember, and everyone, of course, what a terrifying day and time that was. But, you know, after that, for him to stand up for me at judicial forums or judicial meetings and speak for me and my community, I mean, it was so important. And so I just wanted to share that because I think that's another important part of why it's so important for the representation. You know, not just looking forward to our next generations, but also where we are today.
Oh, thank you so much for that. So other than, you know, your representation on the court, what else can courts do to make sure that people of all faiths, cultures, and backgrounds feel seen and respected when they walk through the door of the courthouse?
That's such an important and timely question, Katie, and I fortunately will say there's not a simple answer to that. I think there's so many complex factors and systemic conditions at play that I think a lot of us are aware of. Certainly having judges on the bench that are more representative of the diverse communities that our state courts are serving is very important. And I certainly sense that when litigants of color come into my courtroom and see me on the bench, I can just see something in their face about seeing me on the bench and their comfort level in the courtroom, and feeling that, you know, that maybe they'll have a different opportunity, or at least their own perception of it. I don't mean to say that my colleagues on the bench would not be giving anyone fair and impartial hearing in the courtroom, but I think their own perception is important. So in my chambers, every litigant, you know, I think on an individual level as judges, there's a lot we can do. So in my courtroom, from the unrepresented incarcerated litigant, and I have very many of those, you know, with $100 claim, maybe a very small value claim, they're treated the same as any other litigant or a high profile attorney in a multi-million-dollar claim. And I spend a lot of time, and my staff do, making sure everyone in any matter before me has an even playing field, to the extent my chambers can help with that, obviously within a judge's ethical boundaries, of course. But if they need assistance uploading things, you know, technically to the electronic courtrooms and things like that, or, you know, additional time for explanation of the proceedings or the procedures, you know, I try to do what I can. And I think all of us here and so many of our colleagues on the bench are contributing to efforts like that to make sure it's a fair justice system, but also that it's perceived as fair. But it can't certainly be just individual judges doing that. You know, I think to your question, and I believe that the court system, particularly under the leadership of Chief Judge Wilson, has made great strides, both in increasing, you know, training on bias and cultural competency for judicial and non-judicial court staff, but also making sure that we have qualified but representative parts of the workforce in other areas of our courts. So, for example, court officers or other public-facing staff who are the first people to be seen when someone enters a courthouse for their matter. So I think those efforts have really made a difference. And, you know, we really are just at the beginning of that and need to continue that process.
I have one more question for you. What do you hope the next generation of young women, especially those who might not see themselves reflected in leadership yet, take from your example?
Well, I truly do hope that my career path will inspire other, not just Muslim and South Asian women and women of color, but all persons of color and anyone really, to pursue a path in the law and perhaps to the judiciary or even other service in our state courts. Not everyone wants to be a judge or wants to go to law school, but, you know, our court system needs you. So I hope that people are inspired to look at our courts and the good work they're doing. I also really hope that they take the lesson that by working hard and striving to be the best lawyer you can be and taking advantage of all the opportunities available to you. I love the quote that Justice Wan shared about, you have to be on the corner when the bus comes by. Take advantage of everything that's out there for you. And, I took a very non-traditional path to the bench. I did not have the political connections that many candidates have. Obviously, I engaged in the political process and had to make my way. But, I think that with hard work and taking the opportunities available to you and excelling, that you can make up for any perceived lack of experience or the typical path or political connections necessary to become a judge. I think I also want to say that I hope they can see that their perseverance is a really big part of this. Like Judge Wan mentioned, how long it took her, how many years, and she kept trying. And so perseverance is so important. And I think that's a common theme amongst all of us that are going to be speaking today, that when people may say there's no viable path for you or for judgeship or whatever other leadership role you want to see yourself in, that just to persevere and to learn, as I had to do, and I think all of us have had to do that are speaking today, that, that self-doubt is always going to be there, I think, for probably most individuals, but to try to put that aside and trust yourself and your work, and if you're qualified for something and have distinguished yourself, and you also happen to come from an underrepresented community, just go for it. And I always say what Judge Wan says, and, I don't know which of us said it first, but we sort of just, say this all the time together, that it was challenging for me, so I encourage and challenge young lawyers to say to themselves, because I spent many years thinking, well, why me? Why could I be a judge? Why should I do this? I don't think I can do it. But to turn that around and say, why not me? And so I hope they take inspiration, not just from me, Justice Wan and Judge Saparic, and you're going to hear from Judge Vargas. Just go for it. If you don't, someone else will, as Justice Wan said. I hope they take that from my example.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Judge Chaudhry. I'm going to pass it back to Angelique right now.
Judge Vargas, I think it's time to put you on the hot seat, so to speak.
Thank you.
And, it's been a pleasure attending some of your programs throughout the year. And I would like to ask you, can you share with us your personal journey? What drew you to the law and ultimately to the bench?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Ms. Buckley, for your introduction, and to Angelique Moreno and Mr. French of the New York State Bar Association for inviting me to speak. I'm especially delighted to have my friends and colleagues, Judge Saparic, Associate Justice Wan, and Judge Chaudhry joining me today. I was born and raised in the coastal town of Arecibo, Puerto Rico, to loving parents of traditional Catholic values. Both of them were pharmacists. They instilled in me spirituality, the importance of education, and the joy of helping the less fortunate. From an early age, however, I was subject to teasing and humiliation by my school peers, from being called a sissy boy, or in Spanish, un pato. And as a young gay man, I saw limited opportunities for me in Puerto Rico. So I decided to come to New York when I was 19 years old, with hopes of perfecting my English, completing college, living my life openly, and perhaps finding a life partner, which I did. I was not the first, like my colleagues, but the second attorney in my family. I proudly followed the footsteps of my uncle, Tulio Villanueva, a public interest lawyer in a rural town in Puerto Rico. I admired his ability to give legal advice in simple and common sense ways, and how he spoke and recited poems in a florid and elegant manner, which inspired me to become a lawyer. I earned my undergraduate and law degree at SUNY Buffalo, and later an LLM at NYU. But along the way, and more importantly, I studied and worked hard, because I learned from my parents that education was the key to contributing to something larger than myself. My aspiration to becoming a judge stemmed from my 30 years of legal experience, having clerked in the ivory towers of the Court of Appeals, the Appellate Division, and the Appellate Term, as well as in the trenches of the Family Court and the Supreme Court. I was fortunate enough to have worked with well-regarded jurists like Judge Siparix here present, who mentored me and taught me how to be a good judge by always learning and knowing the law, practicing my writings, and listening to all sides of the story before reaching a decision. Like Judge Wang, it was not an easy journey. It took me 20 years to become a judge. Starting my journey, like Judge Wang, by applying to the Housing Court and Family Court after 10 years of practice. I interviewed with Mayor Bloomberg unsuccessfully twice. So I went all the way to meet him twice. But then all of a sudden I was appointed to the Housing Court by the Office of Court Administration. And I was there for 2 years and enjoyed it very much. Then after those 2 years, I was appointed to the Family Court by Mayor Bill de Blasio. So it took several years and several tries for me to get there. And then in 2022, like Ms. Buckley stated, I was appointed to the Court of Claims by Governor Hochul. At the different courts, I have honed my interpersonal skills, legal knowledge, and disposition while presiding over hundreds of cases or thousands of cases in family court and dealing day in and day out with difficult issues and frustrated litigants. I have cultivated my patience, refined my temperament, and demonstrated my compassion in order to decrease the tensions of the parties, focus on the issues at hand, and formulate a mutually satisfactory solution to the cases before me. Or if need be, try the case and be efficient, fair, and impartial in my decisions. So my journey can be summarized in 3 words. That's perseverance, perseverance, and perseverance. Just like Judge Wang and Judge Chaudhry stated, try and try again. And look at me now.
Yeah.
TC boy from Arecibo, before you, this distinguished panel of the New York State Bar Association. Isn't that something?
I think that's amazing. And I think when we talk about the American dream, that's part of that dream, that your story takes you from Puerto Rico, which, as everyone who's on our panel knows, as the Commonwealth of the United States, you are a citizen, but
That's right.
takes you from Puerto Rico to New York and to this journey where you now sit on the bench wearing a cape, your black robe, which makes you a superhero. There's so many defining experiences, I'm sure, that you can talk about, but are there any in particular that you can speak about that showed you the importance of having diverse perspectives when we talk about the justice system?
Absolutely, yes. Openly expressing your sexual orientation or gender identity has always made us a target of misunderstanding, prejudice, and sometimes hatred for being just who we are. Those feelings increased exponentially when I became a judge. I was usually the only Latino in mainstream judges or attorneys associations, and the only gay in the Hispanic groups. Of course, that entailed additional visibility to what I do. You could say that I have a triple whammy. I am not only Latino, but I have a distinctive accent, and I'm gay. However, I think that despite the negativity that those traits sometimes engender, I believe that my ethnicity and my sexual orientation brings some additional understanding, empathy, and a diverse perspective to my position on the bench. That intersectionality is positive to me and very visually palpable, like Judge Chaudhry stated, to the litigants to appear before me and are exposed to the system. That for me trumps any misgivings that I may have about being an attorney or a judge.
Thank you, Judge. And, you know, it just made me think about, I don't know many people here know about your extensive work with youth and community programs and the important perspective, your perspective, and why that's important to have someone like you on the bench. How does your work with youth and other types of community programs, how do you see that work connecting to the ideals of equity and inclusion as you see in the courts?
Thank you for that question. Yes. So I'm going to back up a little bit. So since an early age, I saw my parents being involved in several associations. They were involved in the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, the Women's Club, which is called Las Cívicas in Puerto Rico, and even the Knights of Columbus. And although I enjoy the pool parties, the barbecues, the galas and events that we will attend, not to mention the art of selecting outfits for the occasion, it was only later in life that I understood and appreciated the philanthropic, educational, and community service aspect of those associations. So I have always been involved in associations, in college, in law school, and now law associations like this one. And I have always been involved within those associations with the mentoring and scholarship programs offered, because I feel a responsibility to mentor our underrepresented and represented high school and college students from all backgrounds, be that women, Latinos, gay, lesbian, to pursue law school, and law students to be successful attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it is very important that they develop not only their soft interpersonal skills, but the substantive core skills. With that vision, I helped organize a national moot court competition where law students from all over the nation compete to develop their legal writing and speaking skills with the Hispanic National Bar Association. I also participate, like you mentioned, in committees with the LGBT Bar Association, the Puerto Rican Bar Association, to select community-minded, academically gifted, and needy students to pursue a legal career. And all that is encompassed by this verse, this Bible verse, which I am a true believer. For to whomsoever much is given, of him much shall be required. And I feel that responsibility deep in my heart.
I do too, Judge, and I have to tell you that I use that verse. There's a little change to it, but I do say to my own children, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that's important. And obviously, I'm not quoting the Bible, I'm quoting Spider-Man and those who know about superheroes. But we cannot forget where we come from and that we do owe a debt. That's how I look at it. And when we think about the future, when you think about the future, what gives you hope about the direction our legal community is moving in, specifically in terms of diversity and opportunity? Because as you know, diversity, opportunity, inclusion, equity has been under assault for a while.
Yes, as I stated before, every year I have several college and law school students as interns in my chambers. And I speak at high schools, virtually usually, about my pathway and mentor young attorneys. I have noticed positively that the younger generation is more open and accepting of our innate or even self-created differences than we are. They are also so knowledgeable about the web, the AI, and all those wonderful technologies available to them and to us. That fills me with hope about the direction of our legal community and the world in terms of diversity and opportunity. Cities just having this CLE today for the whole state and nation is an important tool to educate people about our intersectionality. Did you know that today we have virtual attendees from Canada, Japan, India, and the United Kingdom?
I heard, and it's amazing.
I know. And look at us on this panel. How wonderfully different we all are. And we are the window to the future, I feel. So just like I was mentored and I am mentoring the next generation, I exhort you, all of you who are seeing me today, to donate your time to mentor and help all students to pursue their dreams, be that as a doctor, as a lawyer, as an artist, anything that you think appropriate of their dream.
I agree, and thank you so much, Judge. And underscoring what you just said, there's many more things that we have in common than what draws us apart.
True.
I'm going to turn the program back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Angelique. So I am going to go back to Judge Juan. There's been a lot of discussion about mentorship tonight, and that's something that you emphasize the importance of. So what are some specific ways that you mentor aspiring judges?
So I'm going to start by saying when I was appointed to the Court of Claims in 2018, the presiding judge of the Court of Claims, the Honorable Richard E. Seiss, who we just call Dick, Dick said to my class of new Court of Claims appointees, there were 8 of us, he said to us, "You're all here because you have juice." And I was like, "What do you mean I have juice? What does that mean? I don't have any juice, right? I don't know anybody. I don't have juice. There's no way that I have the juice that it takes to get anything done, right?" I often think about that because it really took a while for that to sink in, that what that means is becoming a judge, right? It really takes a village. When I speak to aspiring judges now, I tell them, you've got juice too. Everybody has juice. They just need to realize that they have it. And what I mean is, you have a career as a lawyer, and you've done all these amazing things in your legal career, and you've made all these connections, and you've built all of these relationships along the way. This has laid the pathway for the judiciary. So you need to think about all of the relationships that you have developed along the way. Go through your internal Rolodex, for those of you who are who are old enough to know what that is, right? Your internal Rolodex, A through Z, right? Think about all of the people that you know, that you have worked with, that are in important spaces or in relevant positions, who might be able to help you along the way to make your path to the judiciary easier for you, right? When my dear friend Judge Chowdhury says, "I didn't have the political connections," I've said to her, you have so much in the amazing career that you have built and all of the connections that you made along the way. That is your juice, right? So you've got juice, everybody's got juice. So I spend a lot of time talking about that, because people will say to me, "Oh, I put my application to the Court of Claims or to the Mayor's Committee, but I don't know anybody. I don't have any connections. I don't know anybody. I'm not political." And I'm like, "Wait, hold up. You're thinking about it in the wrong way." So you need to catalog your life and go through the things that you've done and the connections you've made along the way. And people realize really quickly, oh, well, right, I did spend 3 years working in the city council, right? Or I did work at the AG's office, or I worked for this office or that office, and I met these people along the way. So I think getting people to understand that they have built all those connections, and though all those connections become important, regardless of whether or not you're seeking mayoral appointment or gubernatorial appointment or election to the district court, the city court, wherever. So it all becomes important in whichever process you may be pursuing in terms of your road to the bench. And the other thing is that I often, I feel like I I give people a lot of homework. So say, oh, you should be visible, and you should get out to events. Go to this judicial association event. Go to this bar association event. You're going to meet all these people, and sometimes folks have a hard time with getting out and mingling with people that they don't necessarily know, being in a room full of strangers. It is quite scary, right? But I say, shake the hands of 3 people and write down who they are and tell me who you met, and tell me about those conversations, right? So I give people homework, and I really do think that it's important. And then to follow up with those relationships and those people that you've met. So those are some of the things that I like to focus on.
So you give all this wonderful advice to these younger attorneys. If you could meet your younger self, what would you tell her?
So I, embarrassingly so, did not join a bar association for the first 9 years of being an attorney in the state of New York. I worked for the New York City Administration for Children's Services. I was a busy city attorney, cases all day, all night. And then I went home, I put on my pajamas. That's what I did. I didn't go out. I wasn't involved. My colleagues were also doing the same thing. We were so exhausted from the day's work that we didn't think to look up and do anything else. So nobody told me, hey, maybe you should join a bar association. Also, something else that just never occurred to me. I didn't know any better, and I didn't have anybody telling me to do that. So it wasn't until I started working with Margarita Lopez Torres, who I was talking about before, until I think she was the one that said, you should join a bar association, right? And really, I hadn't been involved before. I was devoted to my job, and I did a good job at it, but I really didn't do anything else. So she knew that I was still interested in family court, even though I was working in surrogates court, and she told me about the city bar, for example. They have like 150 committees. You can stay involved in the family court universe. You can join one of their, 5 or 6 committees that deal with family court and family law. And that's what I wound up doing. I wound up joining the family court and family law committee. And then I became involved and enjoyed it. And then I wound up chairing that committee. That was not my intention. So I joined the Brooklyn Women's Bar Association, and I became a board member. And, that's like 13 years ago now. I joined the Asian American Bar Association, and then had that whole community. So so I would have said to myself, join a bar association. It really took me a long time to figure that out. And the other great thing about bar associations and judicial associations is that if you have an interest in pursuing a career in the judiciary, chances are you're going to have to go through some kind of screening committee. Screening committees are comprised of attorneys that are active in bar associations and judicial associations, and you're going to be able to mix and mingle with these folks outside of the context of a big, scary 19-person mayor's advisory committee on the judiciary interview, right? So I spoke about Zachary Carter, who was the former chair of the Mayor's Advisory Committee on the Judiciary. I went out to an event and he was at the cheese and crackers table, right? I never would have had that interaction if I hadn't gone out to an association event. So, you know, my second time around at the Mayor's Advisory Committee, I was no longer amongst strangers because I made it a point to get out a little bit, go to a few bar association events, go to a few judicial association events. So then the next time around, when I was before these screening committee folks, I knew a couple of them and they knew me from a context that was not that big, scary interview room. So that is, you know, I didn't really intend for that to be a plug for bar associations, but that I think it's important. And I would have told myself, get involved sooner.
Well, that's some wonderful advice, and of course, we appreciate the plug. Okay, thank you so much, Judge Juan. Angelique, I'm going to send it back to you.
Thank you, Katie. And Judge Juan, I agree. Because of bar associations, I have made great friendships. Now, it's just not the context in terms of business, but it's the relationships that I've made through bar associations. And
I met you.
I consider that a blessing. Having Judge Saparic, being in the same room with her. I don't know if I would have ever had that privilege, but through the Puerto Rican Bar Association, as well as the New York State Bar Association, which she's very active. And Judge Saparic, now I am coming right back to you, so I hope you don't mind. I have a good question for you, Judge Saparic. You talked about, growing up in Washington Heights, then becoming a lawyer for legal aid, then following the path to be a judge, and now you are a practicing litigator back to where I guess you kind of started. And I have to ask, we're through this path that you've had, this journey, have there been challenges or moments that have shaped you, that shaped your purpose as a lawyer or as a judge?
Okay, well, thank you, Angelique, for your question. And let me just mention that I met you through the Puerto Rican Bar Association. And actually, the first time I met you, somebody else had picked up my tote bag. Do you remember that evening?
I do.
I had a generic Longchamps tote bag, which 10 other people probably had the same one, and someone had walked away with mine, and I went home without my bag, and my whole life was in that bag. And I called you, and it was discovered. It was discovered in Judge Deborah Kaplan's car. Her court attorney had mistakenly taken my bag. And I remember calling you that night and the following morning, and you were very helpful and very understanding, and I appreciate that, Angelique. And we've been friends ever since.
Anytime.
Challenges, it's all been said today, and talking about big, scary interviews. I've been through many big, scary interviews. When I was applying for the criminal court, when I was applying for the Supreme Court, when I was applying for the Court of Appeals, and I have to tell you that I went to appellate division interviews also. That never worked out. But I went to Southern District interviews. I went to Court of International Trade interviews. I went to many, many, many interviews. And I think finally I got it right. But what's been said earlier about connecting with people and networking and joining bar associations, it was through a bar association that I first met Victor Kovner. And at the time, he was part of Mayor Koch's advisory committee on the judiciary. And I met him through somebody who I knew at one of the committees that I belonged to at the city bar. And she had approached me. We were both in the court system. And she said, "Do you have your 10 years in yet?" And I said, "Yeah, I have my 10 years." I knew exactly what she was talking about. And she said, "Well, Mayor Koch has become mayor, and he's very interested in bringing more women onto the bench, and certainly interested in bringing Hispanics onto the bench." And there weren't that many at the time. This is 1978. So, we're talking about, close to close to 50 years ago. Anyway, so I applied, and I met Victor Kovner. He shepherded my application. I went before the subcommittee. I went before the full committee. I applied. Mayor Koch appointed me. And I guess the rest is history. But the same thing happened along the way. By being part of organizations, the Puerto Rican Bar, the Women's Bar, the City Bar, the County Lawyers, the State Bar, I met a lot of people. And when it came time for these, what I perceived as promotions within the judiciary, I was able to call upon people that I knew. For example, when I went for Supreme Court, there were a couple of lawyers who had appeared before me and who knew me. I was working in the courts at the time, and then lo and behold, they were district leaders in Manhattan, or they were involved in some sort of judicial screening, and that was very helpful for me. I attended, I remember, the first Hispanic Heritage event in Albany, which was in 1985. It was Hispanic Heritage Week. It was a week then. Now it's a month, but it was a week. And I attended that first meeting, and I met the appointment secretary for Mario Cuomo, Antonio Burgos. So years later, when I was applying to the Court of Appeals, and just my friendship with Antonio Burgos was very helpful to me. He had been his appointment secretary. I also had met Evan Davis along the way. And Evan Davis had dated a friend of mine, and I had met him socially, but we became friends. And at the time, he had been Governor Mario Cuomo's counsel, so he was very helpful to me. So I totally agree with what's said earlier, that it's very important to network and to put yourself out there and to spend your evenings going to some of these committees. I know my daughter always said, "Mom, you were never home." Well, okay, Mom was home. I mean, she's, she has revisionist history tendencies. Mom was home, but Mom was also trying to build a career for herself, and was going to bar association functions and attending community events to promote herself and her candidacy. I feel, I guess my slogan is being in the right place at the right time. I guess people feel that I'm a pioneer. Well, I don't know whether I'm a pioneer, but I certainly was in the right place at the right time. And I never embarrassed anybody, and that's very important. It's very important to know that if you have confidence in yourself and faith in yourself and confidence in your work, that you can put yourself out there, and you'll do a good job, and people will be pleased that they supported you. And that, I think, is very, very important. In terms of barriers, I found ageism. We haven't talked about that, but I found that to be a little bit problematic. I was 36 when I went on the bench, so I was very young. And I remember I was sitting in criminal court in Brooklyn, and lawyers said some pretty nasty things. They would say to me, "Well, oh my God, first it was the cops got so young, then the DAs got so young, and look at you, this is ridiculous." So, I mean, lawyers said that to me. They would appear before me and say, "In my 40 years of practice, nobody's ever done this before." I didn't have 40 years of practice. I had 10 years of practice, and not really practice, because it was only when I was working for legal aid that I was practicing. The rest of the time I was working in the court system. So, so I experienced that. I experienced ageism in the beginning of my career. Now, at the end of my career is not over yet, and I don't expect it to be over anytime soon. I'm 83 years old. I'm still here. I'm still working, and I want to continue to do so. But it's very different now, because now I'm the oldest person here. I'm the oldest person in the litigation department here at Greenberg in Manhattan. But it's interesting to see the intergenerational components that exist here. There are people who could be my grandchildren, who look like my grandchildren, who I work with every day, and that I feel is wonderful, and I'm really enjoying that. part of the team and enjoying my practice. And I never was in the private sector before. That's been a challenge. That's been a change. I spent my entire life in public service, first as a teacher and then as a legal aid lawyer and then in the court system and then as a judge. So being in the private sector has been very interesting and challenging and a new experience for me, which and I learn something new every day, which I really appreciate. I don't know whether I answered your question or not, or
You
whether I went on.
absolutely did. And, I guess that my next question is kind of in keeping what was asked of the other judges. For the next generation of attorneys, again, you're the second woman ever appointed to the Court of Appeals, the first Latina. We just talked about ageism, which is a very real thing. I mean, when they said that you could no longer be a judge because you hit the magic age of 70, you were like, no, I'm going to keep going. And you went into litigation. And to me, incredibly impressive. It's not that you started a career over, but you certainly wasn't ready to say, no, I'm done. And when we talk about all the future attorneys that want to follow in your footsteps, what kind of message do you want to give them? What message do you want them to learn from your journey?
Well, I think a career could be very rewarding, but you have to work hard and you have to persevere. That word's been used a lot this evening. You have to persevere, work hard, put yourself out there, let people know you exist, be helpful. As I indicated earlier, join bar associations, become political, join community groups, mentor students. One of the most gratifying things that I've done since I've left the bench, during the de Blasio administration, I had been appointed as chair of the Mayor's Committee on the Judiciary. And for me, having a hand in the selection of the future judiciary was so satisfying. I did that for 8 years during his administration. Actually, Javier came through, Judge Vargas came through that period of time. So to young lawyers or to young aspirants for the bar, just work hard and keep going and believe in yourself. And somebody mentioned imposter syndromes. We all have that. We see sometimes. I remember sitting on the first couple of times I was sitting on the Court of Appeals bench, thinking, well, why did I want to do this? I was so comfortable in my trial court bench. Why am I here? Right? Maybe I don't belong here, etc. Feeling those feelings. When I first sat on the bench as a young judge, well, why am I here? Do I belong here? Is this where I really want to be? But you grow into this. But you have to have faith and trust yourself and trust your instincts and just work hard and show people what you can do and you'll be rewarded. Like I said, I feel that I was in the right place at the right time. People were looking for people that look like me, people who had my demographics, and I didn't disappoint. So I think that's what you have to work on. You have to work on your interpersonal skills. Somebody mentioned about how important it was to keep up with people and to remember who they were and what they did. I would go to a political function, for example, when I was running for Supreme Court, and I would meet a district leader or president of a club, and I would make mental notes about what we had spoken about, what they were wearing, and I would go home and write this down. And next time I saw that person, I would ask them, oh, how's your mother? You told me she was in the hospital. How was she doing? Things like that really make a difference, to connect people on a personal level, connect with their experiences, connect with what they want to talk about. That's so important, so very important. And I think that that's been a key to my success, that I've been able to connect with people at on a lot of different levels. And that I learned from my parents, who were both very outgoing and social animals.
I love what everyone had to say here. You know, I hope that our guests take away with them, believe in yourself.
Right.
Failure is not permanent.
No.
That we're not imposters, and persevere, persevere, persevere. Thank you so much, Judge Saparik. And
Thank you.
now I would love to move into our very special part of our program, the presentation of the RBG Vanguard Award, which recognizes outstanding leadership, advocacy, and commitment to justice. It is my pleasure to introduce our Vice Chair, Seth Rosner. Seth has been a tremendous partner in the work of the Trial Lawyers Section, helping to guide our programs and support this particular event. His dedication and thoughtful leadership reflects the values that this award stands for. Seth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Angelique. I have the honor and privilege of introducing the Trial Lawyers Section 6 Annual Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg Vanguard Award recipient, Marea Wachsman. She is a founding member and partner in her law firm, Schreier and Wachsman. Her practice focuses on representing seriously injured victims of medical malpractice, wrongful death cases, automobile collisions, construction accidents, and other general negligence cases. She is active in multiple bar associations. And recently, she spearheaded a program entitled Women in Law, which aimed at introducing and educating high school women and girls about the career opportunities in law. And in March of this year, nearly 1,000 students were brought into 17 courtrooms throughout the state to hear and learn from dynamic professional women involved in the legal community, from judges, lawyers, court officers, prosecutors, stenographers, and translators. But in addition to fighting for her clients and educating the next generation of young women about careers in the law, Ms. Wachsman's efforts to reform legislation exemplifies her dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion. She has worked tirelessly to have the New York Equal Rights Amendment added to the New York State Constitution. She has advocated for and lobbied for the Grieving Families Act, Laverne's Law, and most recently, the Price Act, which is legislation that places a value on women's work in the home. Please welcome Marea Wachsman.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I would like to just show the award. I don't know if you could see it. There we go. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Rosner, for that kind introduction, and thank you to the New York State Bar Association's Trial Lawyers Section, its chair, Brett French, vice chair, Seth Rosner, immediate past chair and diversity and inclusion program co-chair, Angelique Moreno, and diversity and inclusion co-chair, Katie Buckley, for bestowing upon me the prestigious Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg Vanguard Award. This honor, named after a trailblazing advocate for justice and equality, is deeply meaningful, and I am truly humbled to receive it. I am also honored to be here today with this incredible panel and our keynote speakers. If I may, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my journey here today. It will sound similar to the others on the panel. I consider myself a small town girl as I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada in the 1970s and 80s, when its population was only 125,000 people. We were all spread out in the desert. I was just a kid with big dreams. I was one of those kids that knew I wanted to become a lawyer. I had no idea how that was going to happen, drive a convertible, which I do, and live in New York City. And today I can proudly say I'm living that dream. When I was a young girl, my mother found me an after-school job as a file clerk for a solo general practitioner. I'm pretty sure she wanted me to work in the office so that I would not get into too much trouble after school. I was fascinated, the clients, the lawyers, even the ringing phones, a seed was planted. In my early 20s, I moved to New York City, still unsure what path to take. Once again, I got a job as a file clerk, this time for a personal injury attorney, making $6.50 an hour. I am pretty sure I was underpaid. Eventually, I was trusted with my own caseload and I loved it. The more I worked, the more I learned. Then one day, I had the same realization I imagine countless women have had before me. I am just as smart as he is. However, I applied to law school and was not accepted. I tried a second time, which of course I was not accepted again, and I cried and cried and cried. I was finally accepted on the third try. As it happened, I finished number 20 in my class. Not long after graduating, I joined a trial lawyers listserv, something I never imagined would shape my career. I found mentors, friends like my bestie, Meryl Schwartz, and a professional community that continues to inspire me. Eventually, my husband and I founded our law firm, Schreier and Wachsman. I want to point out that my first appearance in court was before the Honorable Barbara Kapnick, and we are friends today. I definitely didn't see that coming. Never in my wildest dreams did I think my name, Marea Wachsman, would ever be mentioned in the same sentence as Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the legendary, notorious RBG. I am honored and deeply grateful for this recognition. As many of you know, I currently serve as the president of the Women Trial Lawyers Caucus and as immediate past president of the Women's Bar Association of the State of New York, or WBASNY. Early in my WBASNY career, I joined the legislation committee, later becoming its co-chair. That experience gave me a front row seat to how laws are shaped and how advocacy can change lives. I must have worked on hundreds and hundreds of bills. In that role, I've had the privilege of working on legislation to protect children and families, safeguard reproductive rights, support victims of sex trafficking, just to name a few. I've been involved in efforts, as mentioned before in my introduction, like Laverne's Law, the Grieving Families Act, the New York Equal Rights Amendment, and the Price Act, which, as you heard, places value on women's work. I like to refer to that as Betty's Law, after Justice Betty Weinberg Ellerin. It is her who brought the idea to me, and it is me who brought the idea to our Assemblyman Alex Boris, who agreed to take that on as one of his bills, all of which are aimed at expanding justice for those who need it most. Unfortunately, we now find ourselves in a time when diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI efforts, are under attack. Recent executive actions have rolled back DEI initiatives across both the public and private sectors, terminating programs that promoted equal opportunity and inclusion. The New York Times recently reported that many household name companies, including Walmart, have scaled back their DEI goals. Mentions of DEI in corporate financial filings have dropped nearly 60% since last year. I wonder why. But this is precisely why we must remain steadfast. The pursuit of justice necessitates a sustained commitment to DEI. We've made progress before. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a landmark law that prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. And just last year, New York voters reaffirmed that vision by passing the New York Equal Rights Amendment, expanding constitutional protections to include sex, age, race, color, ethnicity, disability, creed, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, and reproductive autonomy. This amendment reflects New York's unwavering commitment to build a fair and inclusive society, one that mirrors Justice Ginsburg's lifelong fight for equality. Alicia Keys said at the 2025 Grammys, "Diversity is not a threat, it is a gift. And it is a gift we must continue to nurture in our courts, our workplaces, our schools, and even our sports." Justice Ginsburg herself championed equality through landmark laws, including the Equal Pay Act, Title IX, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Family and Medical Leave Act, and the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. Her life reminds us that progress is never accidental. It's achieved through persistence, courage, and compassion. This award recognizes a trial attorney who has advanced DEI in the legal profession, and I am proud to have done so through initiatives like WBASNY's Women in Law program, which you heard earlier in my introduction. This past year, as president of WBASNY, together with WBASNY's co-chairs of the Social Action Committee, Kate Falco and Doug Gerhardt, brought a local Women in Law program that occurred in the Adirondacks, and we brought it statewide. In the spirit of mentorship, the Women in Law program's purpose was to introduce high school women to the legal field, to show them the possibility of a future in law by educating them about the diverse and extensive career opportunities available in the legal profession as they make their career choices. As you heard, nearly 1,000 students were brought to courtrooms throughout New York State and heard from dynamic professional women in the legal community. The panelists represented a broad spectrum of professions in the legal field, sharing their journeys and experiences to inspire and instill hope in the next generation of women in the legal profession. It was amazing to see the students' faces light up as they heard the journeys of women who once stood exactly where they are now. They were also very excited to get a name tag, a professional looking name tag with their name on it. They asked if they could keep them. That's how just the littlest things that you could do made such a big difference in their lives. Volunteerism is what made the statewide mentorship program possible. Each chapter volunteered extensive time and effort to facilitate its respective programs. The panelists all volunteered their time to serve throughout the state. The Office of Court Administration and local judges provided the court space. Their efforts and contributions are deeply appreciated and have made a significant difference in the future of our courts. An impressive 170 women attorneys and some guys participated throughout the state. It was a remarkable collaboration and a testament to the power of mentorship and community. I remain dedicated to breaking down barriers in our courts because diversity and inclusion strengthen our justice system. I am proud of the service and impact in our communities, and I'm confident that the seeds planted through this program will continue to flourish, nurturing the next generation of women lawyers and leaders. And there is a Women in Law program that has been already planned for March of 2026. As I reflect on this journey, I remain committed to breaking down barriers and promoting inclusion in every space, because diversity strengthens democracy and equity ensures justice for all. Before I conclude, I would like to acknowledge those who made this journey possible. Mentorship, as you've heard from everybody else, has been the foundation of my career. I've had extraordinary mentors, and I believe it is our duty to move from mentee to mentor, to lift others as we rise. Thank you to my mentors, Helene Blank, Lenore Kramer, the Honorable Betty Weinberg Ellerin, and the Honorable Sylvia O. Hines Radix. Thank you, Deborah Rosenthal, and here she is again, Helene Blank. She gets a starring role all over my life. The Honorable Marcia Steinhardt, the Honorable Bianca Perez, and Amy Richter for nominating me for this award. And thank you to my mother, Norma Schwartz, for teaching me the importance of education and finishing what you start. Thank you to my brother, Dr. Ashley Wachsman, my sister, Melissa, my daughter, Jocelyn, her husband, David, my grandson, Jacob, and the Corona sisters, and they know who they are. And to my best friend, husband, and law partner, David Schreier. Thank you for your partnership, your love, and unwavering belief in me. He has given up so many evenings watching me write position statements on legislation and press releases for WABASME. I am profoundly honored to receive this award in the name of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a trailblazer whose legacy reminds us that progress demands courage, conviction, and the relentless pursuit of equality. Thank you again.
Thank you, Marea, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Tonight's program reminds us why this work matters, making sure our justice system is fair, inclusive, and reflective of the people it serves. To our keynote speakers, panelists, our honoree, Marea Wachsman, Gina, our section liaison, and everyone who helped make this event possible. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your commitment. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you at next year's RBG Vanguard Award and CLE program. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so much. And
Thank
on
you.
behalf of the New York State Bar Association, I would like to thank our panelists for taking the time to participate in this program. And we'd like to also congratulate our award recipient this evening. This concludes the program. All attendees should return to your learning dashboard and enter the verification code announced during the program to receive your CLE certificate. While you're in the learning dashboard, please also take a moment to fill out the evaluation form for today's program. Thank you for choosing the New York State Bar Association CLE programs, and enjoy the rest of your evening.